Hello again and welcome. It's good to be with you. Today I want to talk a wee bit about, for me, one of the most interesting persons in the Gospel, and that's Peter, the fisherman. And it's amazing that Jesus decided to choose Peter as a leader of his church. Let's face it, Peter's CV is not impressive, and his actions during his time as one of Jesus' closest friends and associates would certainly lead us to question his future role as the leader of the church. One thing's certain, Peter was certainly fully human, just like ourselves. He had his ups and his downs, as the gospel record shows. Sometimes Peter's cowardly, other times he demonstrates reckless bravery. Sometimes he's rock-like in his faith. More importantly, have you ever noticed the way that Jesus dealt with him? Now, Jesus certainly had a lot of patience and helped Peter grow into the man who was ready to lay down his life for him, and who eventually did just that. But Peter's growth was a gradual one, with lots of regressions. But this shouldn't surprise us, for this is how authentic growth happens. Let's have a closer look at how that relationship between Peter and Jesus developed. And by doing so, hopefully we'll learn how to better our relationship with Jesus, grow in our closeness to him, and be better friends to those around us. You'll remember that it was Jesus who called Peter. And Jesus did so because he saw Peter's potential. We too need someone to see and believe the potential that we have, because it's so hard to believe in ourselves if no one else believes in us. Like so many of us, Peter wasn't sure that he deserved to be called and to be chosen. And you'll recall that after the miraculous haul of fish, Peter said to Jesus, "Lord, depart from me, for I am a sinful man." Now, Jesus didn't deny that Peter was a sinner. Instead, he challenged Peter to reach out, to go forward, to launch out into the deep. Don't we also need to be challenged if we are to grow? Demands have to be made on us. It's been said that not to demand anything from someone is to condemn them to sterility. Jesus involved Peter in his work, his mission, his ministry. Jesus collaborated with him. They became partners. Peter is no mere messenger boy or gopher. Responsibility helps each of us to grow. Jesus asked Peter to declare his loyalty when he said, "Will you also go?" Peter therefore had to look into his own heart, to choose and decide to stand on his own 2 feet. And you'll recall that when Peter made his great declaration of faith, the one that goes, "You are the Christ, Son of the living God," Jesus praises him and promises him further responsibility. Now, every one of us, without exception, needs recognition for the work that we do. We need affirmation that encourages further generosity. You might remember Jesus confronting Peter with his failure to stay awake in the garden. Peter, can you not watch even 1 hour with me? Then there was that foot washing incident when Jesus threatened to cut Peter off completely. Well, sometimes we too have to be stern and refuse to compromise on matters of principle. You see, Jesus understood that when Peter denied him, he did so not so much out of evil as out of weakness. And he allowed him the space to learn from his failure, and he forgave him, giving him another chance to begin again. He didn't cut him off. We also need someone who can understand our weaknesses and doesn't cut us off because we just can't make the mark right away. One thing that Jesus never did was to spoil Peter, because that would have ruined the chance of Peter growing. The thread which runs through their relationship is this: Peter knew that Jesus loved him. Love, then, is the climate in which people grow. Nothing will grow in a climate of coldness and mistrust. This was the rock in Peter's life, the one constant, unchanging thing. He knew Jesus believed in him and loved him. It was only when Peter regained his faith and reasserted his love for Jesus that he was put in charge of the flock. Feed my lambs, feed my sheep, instructs Jesus. Peter had climbed up from the valley of failure, and that made him a very understanding leader. You know, in some ways we too share Peter's story. We're very much like him. We blow hot and cold in our loyalty to Jesus from time to time. Sometimes we're strong, and at other times we're like a reed blowing in the wind. But we should never, ever be afraid to look at ourselves to see if we're growing as Christians, to see if we are deepening our relationship with Jesus, recognizing that we are becoming more Christ-like in our journey of faith. Without that loving relationship with Jesus as Peter had, we're really only on the fringes of Christianity. We're a bit like someone talking about love rather than being someone in love. We can learn so much from Peter for developing our own relationship with Jesus. Now, history and tradition tell us that Peter was the first pope. In assessing a pope, perhaps we should not be looking so much for cleverness, for there's enough cleverness in our world, but by his goodness and how much he loves, how he washes feet and carries the lambs. And let's never forget that the Pope is human just like us. So let's not make a Superman out of him, much less a mini God. I want to finish with just a non-biblical quote for you to think about. Dostoevsky said, "You will never improve people by rejecting them." Make a friend. Be a friend. And introduce your friend to Jesus. Wishing you and yours a happy, healthy, holy and safe week ahead. God bless you abundantly.